because she was speaking for me at my Federated Republican Women's group, and she will be speaking for me again on Thursday evening, which is the East Mountain Federated Republicans, actually it's Thursday lunch. That's when the East Mountain Federated Republican Women's next meeting is, and we're going to have our 3 legislators who serve that area who give us a legislative update. And so we will be together again in just 2 days. As I start with you this evening, I have a little game that we're going to start with tonight. I've never done this before. I came up with this idea just for you tonight while I was doing my makeup. I came up with this little game, and we're going to call this game, Are You Smarter Than a College Student? Because as was mentioned, just last week, I was in Southern California speaking on 2 college campuses on energy issues. I was at Chapman College in Orange County, and I was at Pepperdine University, actually it's Chapman University. I was at Chapman University, and I was at Pepperdine University just north of Los Angeles in the Malibu area. And as I was talking with those students, I have to tell you, they were basically Republican students. They were part of the college Republican group that I was speaking to, and they were really sharp kids. They gave me hope for America to see these students. And they were all very interested in what I had to say, as what I was talking about was different from what they've been taught in the classroom. And I asked them a question in the opening, and it's the question that I'm going to ask you. And if you read my columns, and so therefore from reading my columns, you know the answer to this question of my little game, Are You Smarter Than a College Student? You may not answer. Now, the truth of the matter is I do not have access to NSA records. So I won't know if you read my column or not, because I'm not tracking your computer activity. So you may have read my column, and I won't know. So you could cheat. But if you win, as the reward for this little game we're going to have, if you win the one and only copy of my book that I have with me tonight, there are others available, you can buy it on Amazon, but somehow tonight I only have 1 copy, and this one coveted copy of my book, Energy Freedom, I'm going to give it away to the person who correctly answers the question that I'm going to ask you, that I asked the college students in California last week. But I have to ask you a couple questions to lead up to this before we get to the big prize-winning question. And the first question is, how many of you watch the news? Or listen to the news, or read the news, follow the news? Okay, pretty much all of you, I would expect that. How many of you have been paying attention to what's going on in Ukraine? Okay, pretty much all of you. Good. This should be easy for you. Now, many of you, let me ask you one other question. How many of you have heard me speak before? Okay, most of you have, all right? You'll be glad to know I'm not going to say anything tonight you've heard before. It's all new. So, I never give the same speech twice because everything I do is news-based, and the news keeps changing. There's always new stuff going on to talk about, and Ukraine is one of them. So you know that I speak on energy, because most of you have heard me before. You know that I talk about energy. If you think about Ukraine, for those of us in America, what is the great energy lesson we take away from Ukraine? This is the test question. This is the award-winning question. The first person who doesn't read my column, so you don't know it for that reason, who gets it right gets a copy of the book. Carrie, you already have a copy of my book, don't you? No. You know, okay, all right. What do you think is the great takeaway for America on the energy situation from Ukraine?
Well, the importance of energy and that how Europe is dependent upon, I think 80% of the natural gas comes from Russia through Ukrainian pipelines.
It's actually 34%, but you're a good direction there. But what's the takeaway for America?
Don't depend on somebody else for your energy.
Bingo. Okay? You get the book. And one of the college students at each campus got that. And I asked them, what's the takeaway when we look at what's happening in Ukraine? Because what's happening in Ukraine is he who has the energy controls the people. And if you think about what's happening in Ukraine, most people don't realize how totally energy-based the current crisis is. Now notice how I say the current crisis, because obviously there have been things that have been fomenting in Ukraine for decades. There's between Ukraine and Russia. But the current situation in Ukraine is totally energy-based. The president of Ukraine, back in November, on November 27th and 28th, was supposed to be at a meeting in Lithuania, where he was going to sign a free trade agreement with the European Union, with the EU. He was going to sign a free trade agreement. Now, Ukraine, as you probably know, their economy is basically in the toilet. They have a lot of debt, but one of their debts is to Russia. They owe Russia a lot of money on something they can't pay for natural gas. Because as Carrie mentioned, Europe is mostly dependent on Russia for natural gas, and that natural gas comes through Ukraine. Europe's about 1/3 dependent on Russia. Ukraine is 2/3 dependent on Russia for their natural gas. And so Russia basically has a monopoly. Now, think about monopoly for a minute. Why do we in general, regardless of what political party we're in, why do we in general dislike the idea of a monopoly? Anyone want to tell me? I don't know who book to give you, but why do people generally dislike monopolies? What's wrong with monopolies?
Higher prices.
High price, okay? We feel like, and why do we think monopolies are high prices? There's no competition, exactly. That's what those of us who support the free market, we like competition because competition lowers the price. But in Ukraine, they're dependent on Russia. And Russia, if you look at what they do, they have a pattern of the more dependent you are on Russia, the higher price they charge you. So Russia is charging Ukraine a really high price for their natural gas, and Ukraine basically just flat out can't pay it. So the Ukrainian leadership went to the Russian leadership and said, we can't pay this. Would you please lower the price of natural gas for us? Well, the Russian leadership said, we will. We will lower the price of your natural gas by 25%. How would you like it if you went to New Mexico, natural gas company, whatever it is, New Mexico Gas, and you went to them and you said, you know what, I can't pay this, would you lower my price? And they said, okay, we'll lower it by 25%. You'd be pretty happy. Now, they're not likely to do that, and Russia on their own wasn't likely to do that either, but you know what? In offering a lower price to Ukraine, they wanted something in exchange, of course. They wouldn't just lower the price of natural gas. So the Russian leadership said to the Ukrainian leadership, we will do this. In fact, we'll even sweeten the pot. We will give you a nice big loan to help you out of this economic crisis. But here's what you got to do. You've got to not sign that deal with the European Union. You've got to not sign that free trade agreement with the European Union. And guess what? We have a block of former Russian countries, and we have a trade block there. And it's called the Eurasian Customs Union, and we'd like you to sign up with them. Forget Europe. We want you to sign up over here. Well, you know what? They were kind of between a rock and a hard place because Russia controls their energy. And so the president of Ukraine said, okay, we will do this deal with you, Russia. And he did not sign that free trade agreement with Europe. And as a result of that, what happened in November? Who knows what happened is? Protests. They've been protesting since November. That is what started the protests because the Ukrainians want to side with Europe. They want to separate themselves from Russia, and they want to be part of the European Trade Union. And so they were angry with the president that he walked away from that deal that was all set up and instead agreed to side with Russia. Now, had Ukraine been energy independent, Russia could not do that to them. Russia could not hold that over them. Now, Ukraine realized the position they were in, and they had signed deals with Chevron, and they had signed deals with Royal Dutch Shell to develop their unconventional natural gas. It's believed that Ukraine has about equal amounts of natural gas that can be accessed by fracking that the United States has. It's believed that Ukraine has that much natural gas, and that Ukraine can be actually a ticket to independence for all of Europe. So Russia does not want Ukraine to develop that natural gas. But Ukraine had signed a deal with Shell, and Ukraine had signed a deal with Chevron, and they were in negotiations with ExxonMobil for offshore, deep offshore in the Black Sea for oil exploration. So Ukraine knew they were in a place where they needed to separate themselves and their dependence on Russia. So when you look at those facts, you realize that the entire situation right now happening before our eyes with the Crimean vote just Sunday, and now Putin saying he's going to annex Crimea to Russia, all of that happened because of energy. Because Russia controls the energy. As Carrie pointed out, Europe is also very dependent on Russia for their natural gas. So how closely are you following this? Let's see. Who in Europe is the likely ally to maybe support the United States against Russia? Who's the
Germany.
strongest country in Europe? I'm giving you a lot of clues here.
Germany.
Germany. Okay? You would expect Germany to say to Russia, go away, you're bad, get out of there, we're gonna do something, because Germany's the powerhouse in Europe. But guess where Germany gets a lot of their natural gas? Russia. And especially since Germany shut down their nuclear plants, they're even more dependent on Russia. So Germany can't afford to rock the boat with Russia. We in the United States, under our current leadership, are not going to do anything. So, you know, this is like the first time that a country has been taken over without a shot being fired. You know, Russia just walked in, and everybody said, we're not going to fight it, we're not going to do anything. But realize, this whole thing, this current crisis, again, I realize there's decades of issues behind that, but what started this current crisis is energy. He who controls the energy controls the people. Now, let's connect the dots to America a little bit more. Climate change has been something that's kind of talked about a lot, especially in Santa Fe, more so in Santa Fe than perhaps other parts, maybe probably more in Santa Fe than, say, Lee County, New Mexico. Climate change is an issue they like to talk about, but you know what? The public doesn't care about climate change. All the polls that have been taken recently, when they say, they give a list of issues, and they say, which of these issues should the government be working on? Climate change comes in last or second to last. There was one that just came out last week where climate change was second to last. But it's at the bottom of the barrel. The public does not care about climate change. However, 2 Monday nights ago, as I'm sure you're aware, the Senate had a little sleepover. You know about that? The Senate had a little sleepover. We've got Ukraine is blowing up. We've got an airliner that's missing. And the Senate has a sleepover to discuss a problem no one cares about? Why did they do this? Why did they do this?
Fundraising.
Fundraising. It's totally fundraising. Okay, we have billionaire Obama bundler, donor, green energy investor, Tom Steyer, who made his money in self-interested dirty oil. That's his term, self-interested dirty oil. He made his money in self-interested dirty oil. Made his billions, but now he's decided to invest in green energy. Now he claims that he is a true believer, unlike the self-interested dirty oil companies. He's a true believer in climate change. And he has offered, in February, he had a meeting at his 1,800-acre ranch just south of San Francisco with a view of the Golden Gate Bridge. He had a fundraising event where he had, Harry Reid was there, Al Gore was there, some other senators who were up for re-election were there, and he pledged $50,000 of his own money, plus $50,000 from his friends, towards candidates, not just any candidates, cooperative candidates, would get campaign cash if they agreed with him on climate change issues. No wonder they suddenly had a sleepover to talk all night about something nobody cares about. Now, when you think about what's the outcome of their climate change agenda? What's the outcome for the average person out there of their climate change agenda? What's it do for you for energy?
Higher gas.
Higher prices, okay? I was in Washington, D.C. in January. I was between meetings, my phone rang, I looked at it, it had a 505 area code, and I was between meetings and I took the call. And this woman was on the other end of the phone. She said, "Oh, I'm so glad you answered the phone. I am so angry, and I have been searching the internet trying to find somebody who can help me." And I'm like, "Okay, what?" You know, and she said, "I am a single mother, unemployed, living in an 800 square foot apartment, and I don't turn on the heat because I can't afford it." Now stop for a minute. Think demographics. Unemployed, single mother, 800 square foot apartment, can't turn on the heat because she can't afford it. Whose demographic is this voter? Is this a Republican demographic or a Democrat demographic? Democrat, it's the Democrat demographic. This is Julia. This is Julia. This is who they say they are for. She goes on and she says, "I am so mad at P&M. She said, "I just got my utility bill. And I looked at it, and it says I am paying $1.63 for green energy." And she says, "I don't give a flip." And that's not the word she used. But she said, "I don't give a flip about green energy. Why am I paying $1.63 for green energy?" I said to her, "First off, you need to realize it's not P&M's fault." I said, "It's the legislature that you should be mad at." I know you weren't there then. It's the I just got it there. It's the legislature that you should be mad at because they voted for what's called a renewable portfolio standard. In 2006, 2007, more than half the states in the country voted to have a renewable portfolio standard. And the renewable portfolio standard says you must have a certain amount of your electricity coming from renewable sources. In New Mexico, like most of the states in the country, it was 10% renewable by 2010, which wasn't all that hard to achieve, 15% renewable by 2015, 20% renewable by 2020. So their P&M is having to put in expensive wind farms, expensive solar panels. They're having to pay people to put solar panels on the roof because in the state of New Mexico, we not only say you have to have a certain amount of wind, a certain amount of solar, but we say you have to have 1.5% of the generation must come from what's called distributed generation, which basically means rooftop solar. So they have to pay people to put solar panels on their roof so they can meet the state law. Now they've done this. In order to do this, they've had to borrow money. They're paying interest on that borrowed money. Now, of course, you understand who actually pays that interest. We do. The ratepayers. All of us do. So P&M a couple years ago, maybe a year and a half ago, went to the PRC and they said, "Could we please have a rider on the bill for this green energy, because if we could have this rider on the bill, it would save the ratepayers a big bunch of money." So Pat Lyons in particular, Public Regulation Commissioner for my district, Pat Lyons said, "You know what, we'll do this, but we're going to put a line item on the bill that says this new increase is for green energy." Now you can be sure that the Greenies fought this like crazy, because it's really hard to say that wind and solar are free when there's a line item for it on your bill. So I explained to this woman where this comes from. And so I explained to her the problem with that. I said, you need to be angry with the legislature, not with P&M over this particular thing. But I want you to see this whole climate change agenda is what has pushed this idea of we need to have renewable energy. And what does renewable energy do, as we've already discussed? Same answer. It does what? Gives people...
It kills birds.
Well, yes, it's the tepid. It's the the Benihana style cooking. Yeah. The wind turbines chop up the birds, the solar plants fry them up right in front of you. So that's what renewable energy does. But for the people, what does the climate change agenda do to your energy prices? Makes them go up. So when energy prices go up, what do people have to do? from Mora County. Mora County is the first county in the country, and they are proud of it, to ban all oil and gas drilling. They're proud of this. There is a movement nationwide. It's not just Mora County. I think that the group behind this just worked hard until they found someone foolish enough to bite on their plan. And now Mora County's got 2 lawsuits against them. But in November, 4 cities in Colorado voted to ban fracking. 1 in Ohio voted to ban fracking. It was on the ballot in 3 cities in Ohio, but only 1 voted to ban fracking. New York has a moratorium on fracking. There is an organized movement to ban fracking in this country. Now realize 96 to 98% of the wells in America currently are drilled using hydraulic fracturing, which is called fracking in the vernacular. 96 to 98% of the wells. Do you have any idea what would happen if they banned fracking? I'm toward the end here, so I'm circling back to Ukraine. What would happen if they banned fracking in the United States?
Production drop.
We would be totally dependent on OPEC, the Middle East, and Venezuela, countries who hate us. We would be totally dependent on them. Our energy prices would go through the roof. Remember, most of you in the room are old enough to remember the Arab oil embargo of 1973, 40 years ago, anniversary in October. When the OPEC countries in 1973 said, we're not going to send you this, it was a punishment for us because we did something they didn't like in supporting Israel in a war. And they said, we're not going to send you any more oil, or we're going to charge you a lot more for it. It threw the country into an overnight recession. But you know what? They can't do that to us anymore. They can't use energy as a control mechanism for America anymore, because you know what? We are now the world's #1 energy supplier. When you think of oil, natural gas, coal, and uranium that we have in this country, we are the world's #1 energy supplier. And just like Russia is not happy that Ukraine was trying to get energy independence until they stepped in to circumvent that, to stop it before it happens, you can be sure that there are plenty of people out there who do not want America to be energy independent. And you have to look at who those people are, and you have basically the Democrat Party, and you have to say to yourself, why are they doing this? In my introduction, Representative Correa mentioned that I write a weekly column for townhall.com. And when I write that column every week, I used to call my mother. She's a professional speaker, former English teacher, author of 40 books. And I used to call my mother up and read her my column every week. I still read it to her most weeks. But as I would read it to her, she used to always say to me, why are they doing this? They're going to ruin America. And I would say, Mom, that's the plan. You can't watch this stuff every single day like I do and come to any other conclusion. So when you think about, why are we at a Republican event? Why are we talking about energy? Why does this matter? One of the reasons it matters is because it matters to the Democrats. They're using it as a tool for control. They're using climate change to push more green energy. If you paid attention to Obama's new budget, despite the $1.5 billion that have been spent out of this administration towards green energy, and realize 32 of those projects have already failed. Another 22 are circling the drain. Now, these projects that were funded by our taxpayer dollars, some of them were really some innovative technologies. Some of them weren't. They weren't free market. The market wasn't ready for them. They weren't cost effective. There's a whole lot of reasons why they failed. But what happens when a company fails? What happens to their assets?
Seized.
No, well, they could sort of be seized. But what do they do with those assets?
Oh.
Auction them. Yeah, they auction. They sell them off at pennies on the dollar. These innovative technologies that our taxpayer dollars paid for, and guess who buys them?
The Chinese.
The Chinese. We borrow the money from the Chinese to put into these projects. We develop them, and then we sell them back to the Chinese. There's a battery company, mentioned Tesla batteries, possibly coming to New Mexico, the batteries for the Tesla cars, possibly coming to New Mexico. There was a battery company that was supposed to be making batteries for the Fisker, which also went bankrupt. And this battery company, this is a little side tangent, Orlando, but this battery company was called A123. Part of the deal of the bankruptcy sale is China, when they bought it, had to change the name. They couldn't use A123. Now, I don't know why I think this is so funny, but it cracks me up. Guess what they named the new battery company?
B123.
B456. See, I'm glad you think it's funny too. It just makes me laugh. And it couldn't be A123, but now they're B456. So the Chinese bought the battery company. So, you know, energy needs to be a discussion in the 2014 election cycle. How do you make it a discussion point? One thing, I've got bumper stickers for all of you. If you want them, take them. Do not take them to humor me. I run a nonprofit organization. I have to beg for money to pay for these. But if you don't put one of these on your car, take one. Energy makes America great. This is a passive way. You don't have to say outrageous things like I do. You don't have to go on the Daily Show with Jon Stewart. You don't have to do crazy things. You can just put this on your car, and everybody behind you will be subtly reminded of the role energy plays in their life. Francis, would you mind passing those out for me for anyone that wants them? Again, don't take them just to humor me. Then, for those of you who are more snarky, I have another bumper sticker. This one says, "Smash the watermelons." And you may think, well, what are the watermelons? Well, you know what? This is designed to make people ask. Don't take it, don't put it on your car, unless you're willing to have the conversation in the grocery store parking lot. When people say to you, what are the watermelons? Well, the watermelons, I have another little freebie here for you. The watermelons are the environmental zealots who are green on the outside, like environmentalism. But when you study what they're doing every day like I do, you realize that while they may be green on the outside, they are red on the inside. There's more. They are red on the inside, like neo-socialism, neo-communism, or simply just control. What do you think the lesser prairie chicken's about? It's about control. So I have pens for you. They're green on the outside, but when you write with them, they write with red ink. Now you can also think of the watermelons as the green energy projects, because while they are green on the outside, they appear to be green. For us, the taxpayers, what do they actually produce? Red ink. So you can think of them that way. In closing, I'm going to pass Francis or someone else, maybe Samuel will do this for me. I've got what I like to call my oversized business cards because I believe in living large. And I specifically want to point out on my oversized business card, there's a photo here. And for those of you that have this, look at that. And what is this photo of? For the few of you that have it, or the few of you who heard me speak before that know this, what's this photo of? Since they're just being passed out, I'll tell you. Oh, Korea. Yeah, it's the Korean Peninsula. A satellite photo of the Korean Peninsula at night. What do you notice about North Korea at night? How does it look? It looks black. Now, if you look closely, those of you that are over here in the black, you won't be able to see probably. But there's one little spot there, which is Pyongyang. And I've been told that was Kim Jong-il's large screen television. Other than that, North Korea is a communist country. Now, South Korea is, there's a cheat sheet here, South Korea is a free market, democrat, and developed country. How does it look at night? Right. Now, with the energy policies that this administration is putting forth, where are we headed in America? We're headed to North Korea. Remember, he who controls the energy controls the people. We in America are blessed because we have an abundance of energy supplies. But we have an administration and his cronies who don't want us to touch them. They want to make energy harder to access. They want us to use less of it. They want us to pay more for it. And Ukraine provides us with a good example. Why would they be doing this? The thing that is the single driver of the American economy that's created millions of jobs and given America, made us the leader, world energy leader. Why would they want to take this away from us? And the answer to that should scare you into getting everybody you know to go out and vote in the 2014 election cycle to flip the Senate, to Republican control, because you know what? A rhino is better than a Democrat. And if we can flip the Senate, we get rid of Harry Reid. At this point, all that matters is winning. Thank you.